Good evening. Hi. I'm going to do a little bit more reading through the New Yorker article. There's still quite a bit more to go, really. But before I start reading it, I just wanted to... The bit that I started with in the video last time was to do with the record of deaths across 2015 and 2016 from the Freedom of Information request, and the fact that they were missing in certain months where there should have been a death showing, an early neonatal death showing, and they weren't there. And then what the Twitter account holder called at Letby Witch Hunt, at Letby Witch Hunts, brought in one of the subsections of the RCPCH report, in which it said that the reporting of deaths through these datic systems and other internal systems in the hospital was sporadic, really, and not systematic. And there was an acknowledgement there that only 10 of the 13 deaths across this June 2015 to July 2015 period were reported, and a suggestion made that some of the deaths weren't reported. Now, what reported means in terms of what you end up with that Freedom of Information request is, I'm not sure how that links in terms of, well, just because it wasn't reported on the datic system, does that mean it shouldn't be on the system that there's a death in that month at all? That doesn't make sense. But nonetheless, is it a suggestion that there's a reason they were kind of miscoded or wrongly coded or chosen to be coded? Someone else has said today, and sorry, I just can't remember who it was, but they said that there are instances where if parents can ask to have the death registered as a stillbirth, even though it isn't a stillbirth technically. I haven't gone far down that line, but the bit I missed out, I've got to focus. The bit I missed out yesterday was that if the reason why it didn't end up on that freedom of information request, those two deaths in August and October 2015, if the reason is because they weren't reported, and the reason they weren't reported is because, as they say in that RCPCH section, because they were expected deaths. That's what it says there. That's the kind of reason or excuse given, because they're expected deaths. Then is that a further confirmation, potentially, that two deaths that ended up being murder charges and murder convictions were deemed by the hospital formally, and therefore by the doctors, whoever signed off, whoever decided what the coding should be, or that it shouldn't be coded, or it shouldn't be reported, but that they were expected deaths. So you have then the situation, just to recap, of Evans coming along 2 years later from a bunch of, in his words, shabby notes that are all over the shop, that he has to print out. They're upside down, some are all out of date. And he contradicts, he overturns, well, first of all, he overturns all the pathologists' work, all the post-mortems. He overturns them, bang, 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 again and again and again. It's very easy for him to do that. He also overturns Dr. Jane Horden's report, in which she looked at all those 13 deaths, and apart from 4, she thought there wasn't anything. There were no signs of intended harm, and those 4 were investigated further by another neonatologist. So Dr. Jane Horden is a neonatologist. Evans isn't. And those 4 deaths that Dr. Jane Horden said, well, these need to be looked into further. I haven't got the time. So it was taken up by another neonatologist whose name we don't know, but whose findings were different to Evans, i.e. she obviously didn't find any signs of intended harm. Had she done, they would have gone to the police then, wouldn't they? So she obviously didn't. And it's stated here in this article, New Yorker article, that and in the Guardian article, I think from memory, that no, it's in the Guardian article that these 4 deaths that were looked into further by the second unnamed neonatologist, they were obviously deemed to be explainable. Dr. Jane Horden has said all the other ones are explainable. The pathologist has said they're all explainable. And now, with this section in the RCPCH report, we've got another potentiality of the doctors there at the time, effectively saying 2 of those what become murder charges and murder convictions are explainable. Potentially. I think there's a link there, and that's why I think it's so important to try to find out more about that. I've made some further FOI requests to I'm just trying to be a bit careful with what I ask them, because I'm not sure you can trust them, to be honest. If they if things are coming out that they realise this is a bit dodgy here. Anyway, I won't run away with that, but I think there's a possible link there. So I hope that was clear, that it's just another potential layer or another example of another set of decision making about the nature of a death being expected and explainable, that 2 years down the line Evans turns over. So he turns over everyone's perception of it based on these shabby notes. That's what he does. And he does a lot more. There's a lot more coming up in this article here that there's a lot more to question. It's extraordinary, actually. Anyway, I'll carry on reading from where I left off. After more than 9 hours of interviews with the police, that is, Lucy Letby was released on bail without being charged. So that's in 2018, after the first arrests and the first interviews. She moved back to Hereford to live with her parents. So I think at that time she was suspended from work. She wasn't obviously going back. She moved to Hereford, so she wasn't going to be working at all. But I think she was suspended on full pay, or I believe so. I think that's right. It doesn't say that in the article here, but I remember reading that because people made a fuss about that she'd been paid over this period of time. Because it took a long time before her registration was taken away. It took years before that was formally done. It's all abysmal. It's all horrific. News of her arrest was published in papers throughout the UK. Quote, "All I can say is my experience is that she was a great nurse," close quote, a mother whose baby was treated at the Countess told the Times of London. Another mother told The Guardian that Lucy Letby had advocated for her and had told her, quote, every step of the way what was happening. She said, "I can't say anything negative about her." That's what the mother said. The Guardian also interviewed a mother who described the experience of giving birth at the Countess. Quote, "They had no staff and the care was just terrible," she said. She developed, quote, "an infection which was due to negligence by a member of staff," she explained. Not Lucy Letby, obviously. Quote, "We made a complaint at the time, but it was brushed under the carpet." Yeah, close quote. One of Lucy Letby's childhood friends, who did not want me to use her name because of her loyalty to Lucy Letby, had already caused her social and professional problems. You see, it reverberates out, the bullying. So if you stick up for someone who's been bullied and monstered on a world scale, on a world canvas, as it were, of being completely othered and crushed, and then it happens to you as well. It's like a feeding frenzy, and it just unfortunately, it reveals the darkness in the hearts of many people, I'm afraid, and the sadism, the latent sadism, is just waiting to erupt, and it's egged on by the greater proportion of the so-called mainstream media. It's egged on and engendered by that, and built up and pushed by that, isn't it? So this is Lucy's Letby's childhood friend. So it's caused her social and professional problems. She told me that she asked the Cheshire police, told me being Rachel Aviv, she asked the Cheshire police if she could serve as a character reference for Lucy Letby, for Lucy. Quote, they weren't interested at all, she said. See, that's another thing. There was not a single character witness brought for Lucy Letby by her defence in the trial last year. What's that about then? What's that about? Why? Why is that? It's got to make you wonder, isn't it? And there would have been many of her colleagues who would have liked to have given character statements about her as well. But I'm imagining the frighteners were put on them by the NHS and the legal side of the NHS. Would have told them, I have no doubt, would have told them, you're not going to be doing that. You're not going to be doing that. Or you can do that, but it's not going to look very good for you, is it? You know, that they would have put the frighteners on them, you know. It's a terrible culture of bullying there. That's what we've got to conclude. We've got to conclude it. Mobbing, bullying, well, yeah, lots of words you could say. They weren't interested at all. That's what Lucy's friend said when she wanted to. Lucy Letby seemed to be in a state of, quote, terror and complete confusion, the friend said. Quote, I could tell from how she was acting that she just didn't know what to say about it, because it was such an alien concept to be accused of these things. Yes, it's a shattering of self-esteem, it's a shattering of yourself, self-perception, it's a kind of soul murder. That's a phrase that comes to mind, a shattering of the self by the pressure of these hideous accusations with no grounds to them at all. It's a nightmare scenario. It's an absolute nightmare scenario. So when you get people saying, Lucy Letby's not behaving in the court or in this police interview in the way that this random people want her to behave, like, if it was me, I'd be screaming, I'd be tearing my hair out. They've got no idea how they'd react under these circumstances. And Lucy Letby, by the time of that first police interview, she's had this for over 2.5 years hanging over her. Not the knowledge of the police thing, but she's been being targeted for 2.5 years since at some point in 2015 she would have been aware of it, wouldn't she? And now we're in the middle of 2018, best part of 3 years. It's very easy for people to say what they would and wouldn't do, and that it's just horrendous to read, and you still read it. You still read it. People say, well, she never protested her innocence. It's just insane. She's protested her innocence thousands of times. In the answering of thousands of questions across dozens of interviews and across a 10-month trial, she's protested her innocence constantly, thousands of times. This is the disjunction. This is the inability for people to observe reality, understand reality because of a prejudice in their mind, or just some, as I said before, latent sadism that just won't see things fairly, can't see things fairly, want to find a hate figure, want to create one, want to attack innocence, actually. So somebody can be saying, I'm innocent, thousands of times, and they'll say, well, But you never said you were innocent. You never proclaimed it. Why didn't you do that? You were strange. You didn't do it. I would have done it. It's just, you can't fight that kind of ignorance. Well, is it ignorance? You can't kind of fight that mindset. You can't. It's like not dealing with rational human beings. It's not. I'm editorialising too. I should just get on with the article. Shortly after Lucy Letby's arrest, the paediatric consultants arranged a meeting for the hospital's medical staff to broach the possibility of a vote of no confidence in Chambers, that's Tony Chambers, the hospital's chief executive, because of the way he'd handled their concerns. Well, that's them just smelling blood in the water. They're high. They're high on their power now. Oh, we've done it. We've done what we've... And I'm not saying that they thought they were going to do that right at the beginning. They just wanted Lucy gone off that unit. But once she fought back, all bets are off for them. And they'll do anything. But there's blood in the water now, and then now they'll go for Tony Chambers because he supported her, as he should have done. And he was, just to mention, he trained as a nurse originally, so he's got a sense of the dynamics between nurses and doctors, consultants, especially these types. So they're gone for him. They're gone for Chambers. Chambers resigned before the meeting. A doctor named Susan Gilby, who took the side of the consultant, she did it like that automatically, just did it automatically, because she's taken over from Chambers and said, well, I've got to keep them on the side, haven't I? She's not going to have the honour or the strength of character to go against these people. And she, unlike Tony Chambers, she comes from a sort of a doctor's background, so she's going to support them automatically, unfortunately, and that's what she's done. Susan Gilby, there's an interesting story with her, because she was barely there that long before she left under this cloud and saying that she was bullied out of the job herself, this new chief executive, Susan Gilby. So it's an appalling situation. The whole thing's... What a ghastly environment. You can see it's dangerous. It's a dangerous, dangerous environment. Gilby told me that the first time she met with Jayaram, it was clear that he was suffering. Oh, he's suffering, is he? From the experience of not being believed by the hospital's management. Quote, this is Gilby saying this, he was in tears, and bear in mind this is a mature, experienced clinician. Well, it didn't seem very mature to me. It seemed like a very childish individual. Jayaram. He was in tears. Yeah, tears of what? Tears of, well, he'd kind of got what he wanted, hadn't he? Tears of narcissistic rage, tears of narcissistic wounding, tears of rage, tears of the desire to go after the next target, which is Tony Chambers, which is what he'd done. I mean, the first time she met with him, does that mean once Gilby had taken over? So why is he in tears after that's happened? It's just absurd. I don't know whether to even believe that. These people aren't trustworthy. They're not trustworthy in what they say and do. Not at all. Like he wasn't trustworthy in the court. We mustn't forget Breary. As some people say on Twitter, we've got to keep bringing Breary back into the mix here. Because I think a lot of people's perception is that he's the instigator. Jayaram's more out there because he's this absurd TV character, But Breary is the instigator from the beginning, I think. But they acted in concert, those two, as a spearhead for that gang of four. Breary and Jayaram. Okay. He described, this is Gilby speaking about Jayaram, he described having issues with sleeping, and he felt he couldn't trust anyone. What? It's all this Darvo, isn't it? Deny, attack and reverse, victim and offender. Lucy Letby's is having her life completely upside down. She's lost her job. She's under suspicion of all these crimes, but they're keeping her hanging on for ages, years. They're keeping her hanging on without over her, destroying her mental, physical, physiological, psychological, psychic health. And he's the one that can't sleep. I don't believe it. I looked at the guy's Facebook, and he's just like a drunk on wannabe famous kind of TV star, and that's why he's hooked up now with Jed Mercurio and wants to be part of that ridiculous what's going to end up as a turkey. Well, it won't be made. It can't make it. Jed Mercurio making a dramatisation of how the hero consultants, whistleblowers. Well, that's that's fiction. That's fiction. As somebody said or tweeted at Jed Mercurio. He's the guy. He's the writer of what's that? That cop show, isn't he? With a guy who's band coppers. I can't remember the name of the thing anyway. Can't remember it. When they're looking at corrupt police officers. Well, that's an irony in itself. Apparently, he trained as a doctor, Jed Mercurio, as well, before becoming a TV writer. Anyway, somebody tweeted at him saying, well, there is a story to tell here, but it's not the one you think. It's about a miscarriage of justice. So we've got Jayaram, he's having issues with sleeping, and he can't trust anyone. What does he mean? He's ready. Well, how many scalps does he want to get before he can trust? It's just that, he's got to start playing the victim, isn't he? It was really distressing. Well, who's saying that? I mean, it's in quotes. It's Gilby, so she's distressed by seeing him do that. So it's buying into his narcissism, buying into his acting, his display. As you see him do it in some of those interviews, you see him push for those tears to come, and he just does it. It's for the camera. It's for the camera. That's what I believe. Other people may take a different view, but that's what I believe. I just see someone in performance mode. Whereas Lucy Letby is not in performance mode. She's in absolute shock, rabbit in the headlights mode, because her life's being absolutely torn to pieces by these monsters around her and the monsters of the police and the CPS later on. She was surprised, that's Gilby, she was surprised that Ian Harvey, the hospital's medical director, still doubted the consultant's theory of how the babies had died. The consultant's theory, so there we have it very, very clearly, don't we? We don't have the consultant saying, we think there could be a intended harm here, but it also could be like criminal level of negligence. We've got to bring the police to make sure. It's kind of an admission here that they had the theory of it was murder. They had, and had that been going on for ages behind the scenes. But as we've said, they would have left it. They would have been happy to leave it. So we've got these people that we're getting a strong message that they're not taking it to the management saying it's about intended harm. They're just saying, we feel uncomfortable, we haven't got any evidence, just get her off the unit, Once she's off the unit, they wouldn't have taken it any further. So how strong is their belief? How strong is their belief? So you've got baby K, that Jayaram, and this is a terrible quote, but it's what catches Lucy Letby virtually red-handed, i.e. not red-handed at all then. There is no virtually red-handed. It's either red-handed or not red-handed. And believes he just caught her in the act. And that's the thing that tips it for him. And he said, well, I know definitely she's trying to murder babies. And he doesn't report it to anyone. Doesn't do it. Whatever way you cut it, he's either someone who's just seen a nurse, as far as he's concerned, as far as his testimony is concerned, trying to kill a baby, and he's not reported it to anyone. He's breaking the law doing that. So how strong was his belief? Or is it all backfilling? Is it all backfilling? Once Lucy had gone, once she was in this admin role, she could have just melted away as far as they were concerned. And this goes back to something that Jayaram said. I wasn't angry at her, I was angry at the system. Because the system didn't bow to their demands immediately, didn't say, yes, what do you want? So we'll do whatever you want, Mr. Breary, Mr. Jayaram. You're the consultants. If you don't like this nurse here, she's gone. We don't need any evidence. We don't need any evidence from you. She's just gone. Thanks for letting us know you're not comfortable. Don't worry about the evidence. She's toast. She's gone. It doesn't matter if she's trained and she's one of the best nurses and she comes in when nobody else will. And people have to ring her up when she's in the middle of a salsa class because nobody knows what she knows when she's off duty. And they ring her up to get the advice. Don't worry about that. We realise that if you don't like her, if you're uncomfortable, you're not giving any evidence, but if you're uncomfortable, she's gone. And that's unfortunately what they did do. And were they looking into her competence during that second half of 2016? No, they weren't. They were just, as somebody said, they were like putting her on ice, as it were, chilling her over there, so they kind of quote unquote keep the peace with the consultants and sacrifice Lucy Letby. That's what the management in the end did. That's what they did in the end. They defended her initially, but only so far. Anyway, what else is happening here? Yeah, so we've got Ian Harvey, and Gilby's surprised here, but Harvey seemed more troubled by their behaviour, she said, than by anything Letby had done. Well, at this point, who knows what Lucy Letby had done? Who knows what she's done? They're still in a process of investigation. So it's all this weird, Evans does this, when I was doing videos last year, it's this idea of, this is Gilby talking post-trial and post-conviction to Rachel Aviv here, but she's backfilling to a previous time in which she's saying, oh, well, I'm surprised that the medical director, Harvey, wasn't troubled by what Lucy Letby has done. Well, we don't, at that point in time, 2018, well, how do you know what she's done? And and she never ended up, she hasn't done anything. But how did she have this mindset of coming in there straight as soon as Tony Chambers has been forced out, comes in there straight away and saying, well, don't you realise what she's done? And this is in 2018. Lucy Letby hasn't been charged with anything. And you've got this Gilby character who leaves in a few months down the line, or about a year down the line anyway. She folds. She leaves the trust. Dr. Gilby, the replacement for Tony Chambers, who's tight with all the consultants. She leaves. She gives up the ghost. And she's surprised and saying, what? You see what I mean? These are very, very untrustworthy people. And it suggests, though, that if that is the case, I'll take it at face value. Take it and believe her when she's saying that that's what she thought about Harvey at the time. That she's surprised that Harvey isn't troubled by anything Lucy Letby had done at that time in 2018. It tells you that Gilby, no doubt in her mind, she's convicted Lucy Letby in 2018 in her mind. Then, if we believe what she says, believe what she said. She goes on to say, this Dr. Gilby goes on to say, in his mind, the issue seemed to be that they, meaning the consultants, the group of four, particularly Jayaram and Breary, I think, that they weren't as good as they thought they were. There's a lot in that. Gilby told me. So Gilby told Rachel Aviv. Quote, it was They think they're marvellous, but they need to look at themselves. That's so interesting. So they've got the medical director saying that at the time, realising what was happening. And you've got the chief executive, the new one, Gilby, saying, well, don't you realise what she's done? No, Harvey's going, no. We need to look at these other people. And then Harvey goes as well, doesn't he, at some point, very soon after, I think. Either Harvey or Chambers ends up retiring in France, I think. I think that's where they end up. I believe that's one of them did. They get out of Dodge, both of them, they jump before they're pushed. They can see the writing on the wall, they can see. But this Dr. Gilby person, very, very, very dodgy. Come in there, 2018, mind, no charges, only after the first arrest. Don't you realise what she's done? That suggests another thing. That she's hearing back from the police. And the chain from Evans, the reports that Evans ended up, the first set of reports anyway, that Evans produces in late 2017, bits of information are coming back via the police to people like Gilby saying, yeah, we've got her now. It's just about building the case, building the evidence, which they take another 2 years to do before they charge. You see, that was being fed back in 2018 to people like Gilby so that she could say with confidence, don't you realise what she's done? Which tells us that early on, Hummingbird, this travesty, this ghastly, I don't know what to call it, this group of thugs in Hummingbird, thick, very, very thick, stupid thugs in Hummingbird, are feeding back to the new boss Gilby, and saying, yeah, we've got her. We've done some interviews, but we're going to build the case now. It's just a matter of time. It takes them 2 years, 2 more years of trawling, and I'm believing as well, Jayaram and Breary are feeding it to her as well. That's why she becomes so certain. She just joined them. She's just joined the witch hunters is all she's done. This Gilby person. In quotes at the end of, in brackets at the end of that paragraph, it says, Harvey would not comment, citing the court order. I just hope, with all these recent articles, and there are more coming out every day, there's some really good ones. I mean, there's some, I'm not keeping up with all of them at the moment. There's so many coming out. I think, I just hope with the inquiry, if it goes ahead in the form it was intended to, that people like Harvey and Ian Harvey, the former medical director, and the Tony Chambers are called, and then they start saying some helpful things for Lucy, really, in terms of what was going on there. That they give honest testimony about that, and they're not just in self-protection mode, that they begin to feel a bit more courage than they might have done before. I just remembered something on Twitter where somebody said, it's Lady Thirlwell, it's going to be called the Thirlwell inquiry, isn't it? Which is due to be starting soon, if it ends up starting, because of all these. Is it going to be delayed because of all these other articles coming out, expressing doubt about their convictions? But somebody mentioned on Twitter that Lady Thirlwell was involved in a case in which another nurse was cleared of charges of murder. I don't have the details to that in my mind, but that's what somebody was saying. So it's like she's got form and knowledge that kind of thing can happen. Will that be instrumental in how she sets up the inquiry, I don't know. But I'm just thinking, what's happening day to day now must have, should have, ought to have ramifications as to what that inquiry comprises and how it's structured. I'm going to leave it there. I haven't got very far in the article, but there's so much more coming up here about other stuff that Evans is involved with that I've only recently found out, because obviously this article has not been that long out, but the information that's coming up in the next little bit, a few paragraphs down, is also echoed in the Court of Appeal's response as to why they turned down Lucy Letby and her defence team's application for leave to appeal, which is a very long document, and I haven't read it all, but I've read parts of it. But there's certain parts in there that just there's extraordinary parts in there with regard to Evans, and it's way worse. I thought it was incredibly bad, devastatingly bad anyway, but it gets worse and worse and worse and worse in respect of what I believe is the darkest corruption you could possibly imagine in this so-called investigation by Cheshire Police, involving, as I keep saying, this triumvirate of the Hummingbird team, Cheshire Police, call them Cheshire Police, the 4 consultants and Evans. The level of collusion and corruption with this relatively new information to me takes it to a way higher level. There was enough before, but it's even on a way higher level. Particularly now, I think, leaning even more towards the police being the orchestrators of that absolute corruption and designing it that way. I'll leave it there, otherwise it just gets a bit too long, doesn't it? And thank you for listening, anyone who has, and have a good night, and I'll pick it up another day. Take care. All the best. Bye.